Chapter: Secrets of Atlantis. The soft light of morning seeped through the cracks in the ancient walls, the faint glow of metramite veins casting golden rays across Helena's home. Miles stirred, opening his eyes to find Helena already awake, sitting by the edge of her bed, her long knitted hair cascading over her shoulders as she gazed out of the window. "Good morning," he said, his voice still husky from sleep. Helena turned, her green eyes meeting his with a small, warm smile. In her hands, she held a small cup filled with a softly glowing golden liquid. She walked over and handed it to him. "Good morning. Here, drink this. It's a sweet morning brew, an Atlantean tradition to start the day." Miles took the cup, the faint warmth of the liquid spreading through his palms. He brought it to his lips, tasting the subtly sweet and invigorating drink. "Wow," he said, blinking in surprise. "This is incredible! What's in it?" Helena smiled proudly. "It's made from a fruit that grows in my garden, enriched by orichalcum in the soil. It's meant to energize and clear the mind." Miles took another sip, savoring the taste, then grinned at her. "I think I could get used to this." "Helena, come with me," she said, glancing back at him with a playful glint in her eyes. Miles raised an eyebrow. "Where to?" She stood, draping the robe loosely around her shoulders, but not bothering to tie it. "You'll see, it's part of the morning ritual." Curious, he followed her out of the shelter, the cool morning air brushing against his skin as he grabbed a blanket to drape loosely around his waist. They walked through the lush greenery toward the sound of rushing water. The waterfall came into view, its stream cascading down a rocky cliff into a crystal-clear pool below. Mist rose from the base, catching the morning light and creating faint rainbows in the air. Helena walked ahead, letting her robe slip from her shoulders and pooling at her feet. She stepped into the water naked, her round, beautiful breasts blending seamlessly with the natural beauty around her. Miles paused at the edge of the pool, watching her as she waded deeper, the water lapping at her waist. She turned back to him, her expression soft but inviting. "What are you waiting for, Professor?" He chuckled, shaking his head as he let the blanket fall, standing naked. "I hope you're not expecting me to be as graceful as you." Helena laughed, the sound light and carefree. "I'm expecting you to keep up." Miles stepped into the water, shivering as the coolness enveloped him. He waded toward the waterfall, the sound of rushing water growing louder as he approached. Helena stood beneath the cascade, tilting her head back as the water poured over her, soaking her hair and running down her body. "You don't get this kind of shower in London," she said, her eyes sparkling with amusement as she looked at him. "No," Miles admitted, stepping closer until he was under the waterfall with her. The water pounded against his shoulders, cold but invigorating. "It's definitely unique." Helena smiled, reaching out to brush a strand of wet hair from his face. "It's one of the few things that's kept me sane all these years. This waterfall has been my refuge, my place to feel alive." Miles studied her, his expression softening. "You've built something beautiful here, Helena. Even in the middle of everything you've lost, you've found a way to keep going." Her smile faltered slightly, replaced by a more reflective look. "I didn't have a choice," she said quietly. "When you're all alone, you either find a way to survive or you fade away." "You didn't just survive," Miles said, his voice steady. "You thrived. You've kept Atlantis alive in your own way." Helena met his gaze, the water streaming down between them. "And now you're here, Miles, dragging me into your world." He gave a faint smile. "Maybe it's time our worlds collided." Later, they sat on the small wooden veranda of Helena's home, overlooking the waterfall. A simple meal of tropical fruits, roasted roots, and fresh coconut water was laid out on the table. Helena had wrapped herself in a loose tunic, her damp hair pulled back. Miles wore the same casual air, his shirt open and his scarf hanging loose around his neck. They ate in comfortable silence for a while, the peaceful sounds of the island filling the air. "Last night, the sex," Helena began, breaking the silence. "I wasn't sure if I could let myself feel that way again." Miles looked up from his tea, meeting her gaze. "And now?" She hesitated, then smiled faintly. "Now I'm glad I did." Miles reached across the table, taking her hand in his. "You're not alone anymore, Helena." For a moment, she didn't reply, her gaze dropping to their joined hands. "I know," she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. The conversation drifted after that, moving to lighter topics as they finished their meal. But the unspoken understanding between them remained, a connection forged in the quiet of the morning and the rush of the waterfall. As Miles leaned back in his chair, he glanced at Helena and said with a grin, "I think I could get used to mornings like this." Helena laughed, the sound light and genuine. "Don't get too comfortable, Professor. My world isn't exactly built for luxury." Miles smirked, raising his juice cup. "Well, it's certainly a step up from collapsing ruins and angry scions." Helena shook her head, her smile lingering as the sun climbed higher into the sky, signaling the start of another day on the island. "Helena, I thought we could explore the city. There's more to Atlantis than what you've seen." Miles sat up, intrigued. "More? You've been holding out on me." Helena chuckled softly. "There are places only I've been. You're the first person I'll show them to." Miles nodded, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "Helena, wow. Okay, go and get ready." Helena gave him a small nod, her expression steady but tinged with determination. She turned and disappeared into the room to prepare, leaving Miles standing in the dim corridor, his thoughts already racing toward the challenges ahead. As Miles stepped out into the garden, he touched his earpiece. "Good morning, Kira," he said, savoring the peacefulness of the morning and the taste of the glowing drink in his hand. "Good morning, Dr. Shaw," Kira replied, her tone playful and overly sweet. "So, how was the sex?" Miles nearly choked on his drink, sputtering as he looked around in shock. "Kira!" he hissed, keeping his voice low and glancing over his shoulder to make sure Helena wasn't within earshot. "Please tell me you weren't listening in. That is not a conversation I want replayed." Kira burst into laughter on the other end, clearly enjoying herself. "Relax, Miles, I wasn't listening. But come on, how can I not ask? You vanish with a gorgeous Atlantean woman and come back sounding all peaceful." Miles rolled his eyes, trying to suppress a laugh. "It's called getting a good night's sleep, Kira. Ever heard of it?" "Oh, sure, she shot back. "You sound way too relaxed for just sleep. I'm just saying, if Ina logged anything, it's strictly for research purposes. You know, safety." Miles couldn't help but laugh now. "Research purposes? Right, that's your excuse?" "Absolutely," Kira quipped. "I mean, if you're out here having heart-pounding adventures, we need to know if anything, strenuous might affect the mission." Miles couldn't help but laugh now. "Research purposes? Right, that's your excuse? Sounds to me like someone's a little jealous." Kira gasped dramatically on the other end, her tone dripping with mock offense. "Jealous? Me? Of you and Miss Perfect Atlantean Goddess? Please, Miles, don't flatter yourself." "Oh, I don't know," Miles teased, grinning wider. "You're asking a lot of questions for someone who doesn't care." "Hey, I'm just saying," Kira fired back, her voice full of humor. "If I had hair that perfect, glowing tattoos, and an otherworldly garden to boot, I'd be turning heads too. But no, go ahead and enjoy your secret Atlantean rendezvous. I'm just here, monitoring your every move for science." Miles shook his head, laughing harder now. "Yeah, sounds like jealousy to me." Miles groaned dramatically. "Aina, classify all conversations between me and Helena as super secret. No one, and I mean no one, is allowed access." Aina's voice responded promptly. "Acknowledged, Doctor. Shaw. Conversations classified as super secret." Kira cackled on the other end. "Super secret? Really, Miles? That's what you're going with? I'm filing that under most suspicious classification ever." Miles chuckled, shaking his head. "I hate you sometimes." "No, you don't," Kira teased. "Admit it. You'd be bored without me." Miles sighed, his grin impossible to hide. "Fine, but you owe me one." "Fine," Kira said, her voice softening slightly before adding, "Now back to business. Did you and Helena find anything useful? We've been combing through the archives, but without the Metromite Core's location, we're running out of time." Miles straightened, his tone shifting to match the seriousness in her voice. "Not yet. Helena and I are planning to explore the city deeper today. She's showing me parts of Atlantis I haven't seen yet, places even your drones didn't touch." And what are you hoping to find? Kira asked curiously. Context, Miles replied, sipping his drink. I want to understand how the Atlanteans thought, how they lived. If we can figure that out, maybe we can piece together where the Metramite core is stored. Kira was quiet for a moment before replying, All right, Romeo. Just remember, time's ticking. We've got 53 hours left on that countdown. Don't get so wrapped up in Atlantean sightseeing that you forget why we're here. Miles smirked. I'll keep that in mind. Helena and I will meet you back at the Sphere this afternoon. He paused for a moment, glancing toward the doorway where Helena was waiting, her serene smile glowing in the morning light. I haven't told her about the cataclysm, he added, his tone quieter. Or the real reason why we're here. She doesn't know about the countdown, the mission, any of it. Kira's voice softened, the teasing edge gone. Miles, you're going to have to tell her eventually. She's key to all of this, and if she finds out on her own... I know, Miles interrupted, his voice firm but thoughtful. But not yet. She's trusting me, Kira. I don't want to break that trust by dumping everything on her at once. I need to ease into it. Kira sighed. All right, Miles, just don't wait too long. The clock's ticking, and we don't have the luxury of time for things to fall apart. They won't, Miles said confidently. I'll handle it. For now, let me focus on today. I'll bring her to the Sphere and we'll figure it out together. Kira hesitated, then nodded, her tone lighter. Fair enough. But remember, she's Atlantean, Miles. She's stronger than you think. Miles smiled faintly, glancing toward Helena again. I know she is. That's exactly why I have to do this the right way. Good, Kira said, her tone lighter now. And Miles? Yeah? Try not to enjoy yourself too much, she teased. The rest of us are stuck in the Sphere, remember? Save some of the magic for us. Miles laughed, shaking his head as he ended the call. Unbelievable, he muttered, still grinning as he turned back toward Helena, who was waiting for him by the garden gate, her serene smile pulling him back into the wonders of Atlantis.